episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another fascinating guest, helping to create a better tomorrow on many different fronts. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Saeed Al-Mubarak, who is chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, Digital Energy Technical Section, a member in their advisory committee of Data Science and Engineering Analytics, and an industry advisor for Texas A&M University in the Society of Petroleum Engineers student chapter. He's also served in numerous international technical steering, advisory board, and program committees, and in the SPE International Management and Information Awards Advisory Committee. Saeed has close to 3 decades of experience in the petroleum industry and has served in various capacities that span local and international levels, including technical, administrative, and leadership roles. He is currently also an intelligent fields and petroleum engineering consultant at Saudi Aramco, based in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. He began his career back in 1992 with Saudi Aramco, where he worked as a reservoir production, drilling and completion facilities, knowledge management, and intelligent fields engineer and specialist throughout the years. Has led several important teams, including strategic team managing the world's largest intelligent field in Saudi Aramco. His contributions to the industry have been recognized by renowned technical, governmental, and social authorities. He's the recipient of several awards, including the 2009 SPE Regional Management Information Award, the 2012 World Oil Innovative Thinker Award, the 2013 Saudi King Award for Innovation, and the 2014 SPE International Award for Management and Information. He is a distinguished lecturer, panelist, keynote speaker at events around the world. He's also developed various courses and workshops about digital oil fields and challenging current paradigms. And he is a recognized thought-provoking author. He's published dozens of articles to promote innovation, to challenge conventional wisdom in the industry, in the digital energy space and intelligent field space. And he's also an accomplished author of a book entitled Any Version of History is Just a Story. We'll get into that as well. Saeed holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and a master's degree in petroleum engineering, both from King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals. And he also graduated from Saudi Aramco, their technologist development program as a reservoir management intelligent field specialist. A lot of interesting things to talk about. But Saeed Al-Mubarak, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's my pleasure.
Saeed, I'd love to start off like we typically do by handing things to you for a little bit, just to talk a little bit more about you, taking us back a bit. Can you sort of introduce yourself a bit, where you grew up, a little bit of sort of the early days and how you got interested, obviously in Saudi Arabia, in both chemical engineering, but of course petroleum engineering, and a little bit of the early days. I think that'd be a great way to start.
Yeah, well, with that lengthy introduction of the bio, I'll just, I will not mention anything about the professional life.
Sure.
Just before university. So I'm at home, the pipe fitter, the electrician, the plumber. Well, I install satellite dishes, fix PCs, install them, and assemble them. And I think that thing more of where the seeds of whatever you're seeing. So I'm a handyman, maybe know a bit of everything, at least around the house and elsewhere. I'm not good in mechanics. I'm just okay as a mechanic. I mean, the rest of the story you have mentioned in the lengthy bio.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to give you a chance to throw anything else you wanted in there, but that's good. It's good to know that you're not that handy, and neither am I. So we have that in common.
Well, what I've learned is mostly from my father and eldest brother, who and I was the helper. So this is how I learned.
Excellent.
And one more thing that maybe nobody knows about. I mean, I do cook.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So do I.
So that's more of a personal thing. That may be what gives me the edge in technology is maybe going into these tiny little steps. So I would recommend anyone go and just fix things that you can fix at home and in your car, and cook sometime.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, that goes back to an interesting theme that we get into on the show about sort of tinkering, about, it's wonderful to, some of the greatest minds in history, they played around, they experimented, and that's, when they made the big discoveries. So it's nice to see that as well, as the science.
Well, I mean, just imagine, being more of a bifitter. Mm-hmm. Well, we fix check valves in certain areas, especially close to the water pumps. Mm-hmm. And one of my patents is the idea is so simple that it's a check valve, but subsurface check valve. And, in a way, you just articulated that it's a new thing. Mm-hmm. In reality, there are only few things that are really, really new. Yep. And revolutionary. Most of the things are either built by simple things that exist, or just similar to previous technologies. Mm-hmm. And introduced in a different way.
Yep. Yep.
So that's how simple a patent is for those who are interested in pursuing authoring patents.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because, you're there in Saudi Arabia. I sit here on the U.S. East Coast in the state of Pennsylvania, and probably unknown to many people that will be listening, about 150 years ago, one of the first commercial oil wells was actually dug here in this state, about 100 miles in that direction, in the area of Oil City, Pennsylvania. Also north of me, about 2-hour drive, is the Marcellus Shale, which a tremendous amount of natural gas. But for someone like me that has very little familiarity with the petroleum industry, I think of sort of the movies and people digging that hole and oil spurting out, and everyone's happy because they're rich, and oil's coming from everywhere. Obviously, that's not how we do things, and you do things as we get into 2022. Introduce us, if you would, to the concept of what an intelligent field is, if you would.
Well, if we talk about a field, it's a thing. And if you talk about anything, there isn't any intelligence associated with it, except if you link it to the intelligence of a human being. So basically, if fields are really instrumented with all the gadgets, all the control capabilities, then they are still things. Mm-hmm. And definitely leadership, management, and engineers are those who can make smart things out of an intelligent thing, actions out of these, means. Whatever they are, be it they are all over, or be it they are in certain places. So in reality, if you don't associate a human being with any intelligent device or thing, then it lacks intelligence. But it's more of an acronym that is, brought, I wouldn't say, that's more of a wave. You would see intelligent devices, mm-hmm. Phones, systems, and fields, and maybe intelligent governments as well. When it comes to not the individuals, it's the system itself. So all of that is basically it has to be built on the capabilities of a human and the intelligence of a human. Now, systems are developed, and they would call them intelligent, but that will rely on the intelligence of a human being again. And there isn't even a definition of what intelligence is. If you go to philosophically, it's different from those who are scientists, and different from just a layman, even in defining what intelligence is. So is it really part of your body, the physical, aspect of it, or is it just something that's more of metaphysics associated with us? So it's an interesting topic, more of a philosophical, but in reality, just to make it short, and the way we describe it, it's fields that are instrumented of wells. Have wells instrumented by equipment, sensors, and control capabilities, surface and subsurface. And they're basically integrated with solutions. Could be visualization solutions, could be data-driven solutions, or physical solutions with people who are managing these fields to achieve certain targets or certain objectives. And that's what intelligence is about. And now when it comes to it, people would say, were our previous fields intelligent? I would say, yes, they were operated with the available instrument at the day by intelligent people. And they were in fact, the originators of, let's say, petroleum engineering as a domain, and they are chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. They built rigs, they drilled wells, and they manage fields. And definitely they manage them using the available tool in a very intelligent way. And now we have the capabilities of all these gadgets and equipment and systems, and hopefully we use them in an intelligent way. So it's managing wells and fields more intelligently.
And continuing along that theme, the chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, Digital Energy Section, and then I saw an article that you wrote. This was back in March 2020. It was in the journal Petroleum Technologies, entitled "The Road to the Digital World." And startup industries have gone a long way in implementation of digital and intelligent technologies and has already realized numerous benefits. However, leaders realize the full value of any transformation is unlikely to be achieved by implementing strategies of the past. And this is where you get into sort of the themes of digital oil fields, digital energy. Walk us through a little bit about, once again, for those that are not familiar with the industry, or only fill up our tanks at a local gas station, what digital energy and digital oil fields is all about as a technological trend.
Again, some people use these terms interchangeably. So digital is more of the intelligent fields. So whenever we mention digital, it's basically mostly associated with the word intelligence. So they can be used interchangeably. Now, when it comes to the digital, it's not really analog and digital. It's just using the new technologies to not only to improve our way of making decisions, maybe expediting decisions. Now we are communicating using technologies. In fact, this session is recorded using technology. And you're in Pennsylvania, I'm in a place or a city called Safwa, and we're communicating, and this is using technology. So now we're capitalizing in technology. Similarly, I mean, which wasn't there, let's say 30 years ago. Now we couldn't do this. So now in the field, you could monitor a field, you could monitor your human resources to make sure they're safe, and they're doing the right thing. You could communicate with them with a headset that's connected either wireless to any system, and you could see them, give them advices. You could control devices, everything remotely. It doesn't mean that did not exist, let's say 50 years ago, but now it's more advanced, and companies, leaders need to capitalize on these and managing their assets. And most importantly, people, to make sure they're trained, their competency level is up to it. They're taken care of, and that's basically what leaders are supposed to do. So they know what the mission is, they know what the objectives are, they're trained on these equipment and new gadgets. So they're part of the company, they're not really doing part of the business. So it's the belongings and feeling of ownership, and definitely if leaders are connected by technology with people, then it's just like one of the titles of the articles, if we were one. I mean, then they're just one body managing, taking care of an asset. And with technology, it can be instantaneous if it's needed,
Mm-hmm.
or on time when it's needed on that time.
Excellent. And so as you know, I a couple of months ago I had Patrick Bangarrett on the show from Samsung talking about his own visions of artificial intelligence and some of the things they're doing there. I know he's part of your organization at SPE. I saw you write a little thing about artificial intelligence, and we mentioned this earlier. There's really no such thing as this intelligence thing. Humans are intelligent. You like the expression, actually, you were saying in this particular article, augmented intelligence, and how we're using some of these tools. Talk a little bit about whether it's AI or drones or whatever the technology may be. What are some of the areas that you are personally excited about as a scientist, as somebody that's a thought leader in this space? Looking out, here we are at the end of 2021. You've seen where things have come from the last 30 years. What excites you about where the industry is going overall, technology-wise?
Well, with all these technologies, seriously, we have more of a saying in Arabic. If you know the details, then there is no magic behind what you've seen as magic. It's just like you remind me of a story of, well, I mean, this is at least a story in our in Arabic language. I don't know how much of it is absolutely true on your side, because it happened in North America when Carlos Columbus came here. Then he was served basically by the natives. And when they decided to quit, or at least thought about it, he knew about it, but he knew that there would be a lunar eclipse out of his literature and whatever he read. So he had more knowledge than what they had at the time. So he could just claim that he could make the moon disappear. And yes, the moon disappeared. So he promised him that the moon come back when they just change their mind. And they did. The moon came back. So it's knowledge. If you have more access to knowledge, then things you can understand what's going on. I mean, this is at least more of the descriptive. I mean, you can describe what's happening, but exactly. So you will be eliminating uncertainties. This is one. The second thing, if there is a decision that you would be you need to take, then you would know that you will take the most appropriate decision based on full set of data. So you're not missing anything. Now it's just like Carlos Columbus. He knew when. So if they did not know, and it was more of a magic, and he can be thought as God. And this is, if you go to history, all those people who have knowledge, and they were referred in the in biblicals, knowledge of the book, in fact. But it's knowledge, given knowledge, then they can do things that seems to be magic to others who are ignorant about that knowledge. Now, coming back to the digital world, the AI and all of these things, it's basically using the available knowledge. And this is more of the AI doing either training. No one has a full set of knowledge, no one. So what we're really trying to do using basically physical-based models or even data-driven models, and this is the AI-based models or machine learning or whatever terms that data scientists would use. They're trying to get the maximum knowledge about a system. Then if you know the system and you know basically the full knowledge, hopefully, then you could predict what's going to happen. Now, and let's say Patrick example of the X-rays and how advanced they are. They collected the maximum number of X-rays around the world. I mean, they got a big data set of X-rays. They've studied them, and the machine just it got trained on these. So it could, with the decisions of the data scientists and the domain experts, then this is what it is. Basically, the machine will tell you, okay, if it sees this, it's similar to a previous experience. So it's exactly the same or similar. So the description of the thing, because it knows, or at least it's been taught, on certain data set, so it has the knowledge. Now, we have the knowledge, let's say, of what's needed from knowledge in the solar system. So we know, the movement of the, at least with our, galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So we could predict sunset, sunrise, eclipses, and to a certain extent, we could expect, predict even weather. Sometimes we, it's not as accurate, but most of the time it is. And it's because it's repetitive. So it's 4 quarter, basically seasons in a year. We know the highest and the lowest. We got the view on what the history is. So the prediction is to a certain extent accurate, and sometimes it's not, because it's with the uncertainties that is associated with it. Now, when you go subsurface in the petroleum industry is a bit different,
Mm-hmm.
because what you see in the subsurface is far less than what you what you see is far less than what, so basically what you know is far less than what you don't know. This is why the uncertainties associated with an environment that you don't see and you don't have full knowledge is a little bit higher.
Mm.
So systems are used basically to give you eyes to the future.
Outstanding. So, in addition to everything that you do with regard to intelligent fields and digital energy and petroleum engineering and tinkering and cooking and things of that nature, you also are an entrepreneur. On the side, you have a company that you are the CEO of called Monuments 3D Printing, Saudi-based 3D printing organization involved in all sorts of interesting areas in terms of prototyping. You've the areas of discontinued parts and so forth, and sort of the potential connection to 3D printing. Talk a little bit about this company. Sort of obviously, on one hand, you work for the largest company in the world, but you're also an entrepreneur. Talk a little bit about both of how you balance all these hats, and what Monuments is all about.
Monuments. Well, the name of Monuments is basically has a story. I was sitting with one of my friends, close friends, who just passed away 120 days ago. A very close friend, more of a young brother. We were just sitting and chatting about this idea and what to name it. So we thought about certain, places, on Earth, and they're basically monuments. We were talking about, history and pyramids and Eiffel Tower and many. Okay, it's monument. No, it's monuments. So we decided, okay, that's the name, and we wanted to create, yes, 3D printed parts, but they should be looked at as monuments. So we wanted them to be so special. So the quality was part of the thing that we just aim. I mean, so it's not really how much we produce. It's what we produce and basically in a good quality. A good quality and satisfying, basically. And my friend was a perfectionist. He wouldn't really let a product go if it's not really, satisfactory to him. And there wasn't anything satisfactory to him. Anyway, well, he just died. He's 32 years old. But anyway, and we learned a lot from this guy. He was young, but he was very wise. So we're still doing this business. In fact, we established it during Corona time, and it was extremely slow, even in constructing the place. But that was a challenge. Now we are producing, parts. You mentioned some parts are just like monuments, but some parts are more of the spare parts. So industrial. And this industrial is a bit tricky. It's not really a souvenir or a gift or just a toy. So you have liabilities and responsibilities as well, and you have to make sure they're really good. If not similar to the original part, then they have to be really better. And you would see voices of talking about, let's say, digital inventory. And this, what they basically think of is making inventories, digital inventories. So that's the drawings of all the spare parts of systems and maybe tools or parts within a production line or a factory or maybe an industry. And basically it's just the drawings. Now, the objective of these drawings and the library is to make sure at least you have all the capabilities to print them on time when you want them. So to eliminate inventory. So if you need a spare part, you know that you need a spare part every, let's say, every week. You don't have an inventory. You know you can produce it, print it, and just get it implemented. Now, I see it as theoretically it works, but I'm a practical and it has to be really implemented to make sure every single part is tested and make sure that the part meets basically the criteria, be it longevity, durability, and even strength and practicality. So it's safety as well. The same concept existed. It's called just in time. So it's the same concept. So if you have a production line, it's either you own it or somebody else own it. Then they basically provide you with the spare part. So you have minimum inventory of every single spare part. Now, the digital basically manufacturing is about the same. That's a new term as well. But the 3D printing is supposed to be helping in that aspect. Maybe not now, but in the future, but not in every industry, I would say, because still CNC and molding will still have, business and applications that I think compete with 3D printing, and it will be for some time before 3D printing really, it will not dissolve them. I don't see it dissolving them. It's an interesting, by the way, journey, and I would advise everyone even to buy a printer at home and just explore these printers, even for kids. I mean, they're doing it. Download files. They don't have to know 3D, let's say, design, but they will learn. Even kids. I mean, this is what I would recommend to any parent. Just buy a 3D printer at home. They're not expensive. Buy a tiny one, get the kids trained on 3D printing. It's not really to know what the printer is, only is to know that this technology or type of technology exists. It's just like I'm a bifitter. They need to be, now it's not bifitting, no more. 3D printing. 3D printing and others as well. So it's programming and 3D printing. It's just like, again, it's a skill, and I think it's needed these days. And maybe they come up with ideas that no one came up with. I mean, these kids are freer than us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, spot on. And actually, you actually, it's a perfect segue to my next question, because I mentioned in the beginning when I was going through your bio that you advise at Texas A&M this SPE Students chapter, and we always ask a question about sort of the next generation and the younger folks that are going to be watching and listening to this show. Say whether we're talking about sort of a student down in Texas, or maybe one here that lives up by the Marcellus Shale, or a student near you in Saudi. What are some of the things you're telling this next generation of students to look forward to? What should they be specializing in? Maybe they want to get into the industry, but they're not sure what the industry is going to look like in a couple of years. What are some of the advice you're getting to the next generation, Mr. Al-Mubarak? What should I be studying next semester, and so forth? Give a little message to the next.
I'll give you what I give to my kids. I mean, and definitely, yes, I'll encourage them to go to universities to get a degree and to develop that thinking process. It's more of engineering is just a thinking process, but definitely the application of what they learn is completely different. So when it comes to, let's say, the petroleum industry, since you mentioned the petroleum industry, so the first ones weren't really well. In fact, petroleum engineering did not even exist yet. Petroleum was explored, the wells were drilled, the production was done. Books were written by chemical engineers and mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. So, and some of them weren't really graduates. So they got the skills. So what skills rather than what degree? I mean, degrees, if you have a passion to a certain thing, let's say we discussed the paintings behind you, and it's for your pretty daughter. I mean, if she loves drawing, why not she go to something she's passionate about if she can afford to? So definitely it's multifaceted when it comes to it. It's financial, it's passion, it's availability of things, be it it's even gender, maybe favored specialities, even if we're going into more of it, just give them the freedom to choose regardless of their preference, but definitely it's skills. I would say go in parallel whatever you study, and even if you're not studying in university, develop skills. And I mentioned bifitting, I mentioned cooking, I mentioned plumbing, I mentioned electrician and satellite dish installation. They gave me skills. I'm not installing no more. I don't have even time to do bifitting, but I tell you what, when I come and I bring even those who will fix a thing in my house, I would immediately know that they're expert and they're capable of doing the thing or not. And in fact, this happened last week where my son brought an expert and I just entered and I told him, who's this guy? He told me he's going to fix the thing. And seriously, it's just my intuition. He wasn't up to it. And I asked him just a question. Did you install anything similar to this previously? He said no. I swear to God. I mean, he said just no. Let me give you an experience, a story that I mentioned in some of the posts in LinkedIn.
Sure.
It's a story of the mechanic. It's the old guy, the old mechanic. And there was a factory, and maybe it's more of a famous story. So there was a factory and that has an engine. The engine failed, and they brought all the experts within the factory, and nobody could fix it. So the manager just asked, bring me someone who can fix it. And they knew that old mechanic used to fix these engines. So they brought him, and all he brought is a hammer, and he hit in the magical place. It's a spot in the engine. He hit that hit, and it was the magical hit. The engine started. So they asked him to send the bill. He sent $1,000, and they wanted to be itemized because $1,000 for a hit. He sent the itemized bill. It was $1 for the hit, and $999 where to hit. So he knew where to hit. And this is basically all the subjects and the questions that we discussed. He knew. So he had knowledge more than anybody else. He knew where to hit. He knew what kind of hit, and he knew what kind of hammer. So that's knowledge is really important. Now, definitely he experienced previously, with several engines, and he failed. But we don't see failures. All we see, in fact, at surface is success and maybe a strong and a wise guy. But definitely he wasn't born that way. So the birth of that wisdom and experience, it took really a long time and effort. So what I advise them, improve your skills, all type of skills, be it communication skills. I mean, they call them soft skills, but other skills, the handy skills, because they will be the rare skills, and they rarely discuss the skills. You will see most of the discussions on AI and digital and, you know, all these fancy stuff. But I assure you that the hand skills are more needed today, and they're really rare. So, in fact, you go to, let's say, the States or Canada, you may get citizenship if you have, you know, if you know how to bake bread, and basically some certain skills are needed everywhere. Skills, not degrees.
Skills, not to go. Okay, no, they're excellent points.
Definitely. I mean, degrees, I would say, I mean, you learn a lot. And definitely when you go from, let's say, petroleum engineering, you go to a petroleum industry, it's a big industry. So it could be from subsurface, reservoir management, it could be reservoir description and petrophysics, it could be drilling, it could be reservoir simulation, and core, I mean, few petrophysicists and or even geologists. So the spectrum is really wide to the extent definitely you would be working in and maybe different things or specific things of what you've studied in 5 years or 4 years degree. So don't expect that you would be solving equations and X and Y's and doing integration when you work. You will work, and all you need to work is basically a set of skills, including the science, definitely. And that's what you'll be, you know, taught in universities.
Well, Saeed, one, in addition to your long list of skills, you know, one that we've not yet touched on, but I want to get into, you have a skill as a writer. Not just your LinkedIn post, but you've also published a book. Any version of history is just the story. And if I just may read the little blurb from Amazon, this book is for people who desire to change their perspective and outlook about life, death, money, culture, beliefs, and most importantly, history. And then, you know, you talk about throughout history, most people accepted and embraced the world that they were brought into, and they're ridiculed whenever they question. And they were ridiculed in whether they questioned their worlds. Societies that do not question the traditions of the past will never evolve. Talk a little bit about why you wrote the book, when you wrote the book, actually, and a little bit about sort of the reception that it's gotten.
Well, it has many chapters, and it's a compilation of, I would say, articles, which I needed to write to myself. And it's just like even these articles I was writing, then in a month or two I was reading myself just to see if I'm convinced by whatever I'm basically, you know, introducing. So I see today as current history. So it's a living history. And if you look at it, all this chaos and even good things around the world. I mean, be it, I mean, today is, let's say, with COVID, let's say, this is more of one of the highlights. And you would hear about it almost in every single channel, YouTube channels as well, personal ones. And everybody is becoming more of an expert, and they speak about it as if they know more than the other side. So there has to be another side. So it seems to be that we don't know, you know, the full story or the true story about the thing. And there are people who are supporting the vaccination, for instance. Others are completely against it. So where is this divide comes from? I mean, while we live in the same world, we have access to the digital world where you can read anything. You know, it's available, and that's available. You could view experts talking in the media, public and private. So why is this divide, which is a normal divide in every single, people have, opinions and exchange of opinions, but reality and facts, it shouldn't be exchanged. It's just like it's a fact. Why do we have different views on facts if they are proven facts? So it seems to be that there isn't anything that's proven, or maybe it's a problem with us believing in facts or disbelieving. And so it's part of our system. Anyway, so why all these problems, hassles, different opinions, which I like. Different opinions is really a healthy thing. So especially in meetings, I would rather attend a meeting with people who have different opinions, but they're not fighting, against each other. Just different opinions, because then societies and companies would really grow, because you see the different perspectives about the thing. And just like I told you, if you have maximum knowledge of a thing, then you will be able to understand it and make sure that your decision is at least better than those who know only little. And definitely then the prediction is even much better. So it's all about knowledge. Now it seems to be we lack knowledge about history, and definitely this lack of knowledge will continue because we lack knowledge about our present time. So how come we, but you go to people and they will claim that they have 100%, the 100% truth. That's maybe 2,000 years old. Geologists also have the truth, but it's full of uncertainties. So why don't we just accept, that history has multiple versions, and any version of history is just a story, and just enjoy it, learn from it, and shake hands with others, and definitely have different opinions, and disagree with some people. It's fine. Disagreements are healthy as well. So that's basically it. So it calls for tolerance, and this is what I see, especially in the Middle East. Well, it's everywhere. In fact, people have different opinions, but in certain places, people get emotional about these differences, and they get aggravated, and they're not, they go into really bad situation instead. And it comes into a personal level between brothers and sisters, husband and wife, society, nations. And if you go and look at the titles, they just call for more of peace and understanding. There is one called borderless. How borders were generated, they're just man-made, except for the natural one. But any innocent eye that's not associated with the prejudice or any negative feeling, don't see these borders, don't see the colors, don't see the genders. They just see fairness, they see love, they see care. So insects don't see borders. Babies don't see borders. Yep. And when it comes to the new, latest subjects about environment and air and pollution, they don't see borders as well. So if you want to look at these things, you have to look at the world as if it's borderless. Otherwise, especially the energy and climate change, it cannot be just an isolated place where you think about and you want to make it the best. You have to think about the whole world, and definitely this is where people need to unite. And another title of a chapter is "If only we were one." So that's basically part of the story.
Yep. No, it's a beautiful message, and actually it just I'm sitting here listening to your story, and I'm always amazed by guests like you that are so multifaceted in your own respect, and on one hand can think of pipe fitting, on the other hand these major issues and solutions for society as a whole. It's been a fascinating discussion, Saeed, and I really appreciate you spending time enlightening us all on these different topics. For everybody that's going to be watching this particular episode on our YouTube channel or listening on the podcast, you've been listening to the fascinating, multi-talented Saeed Al-Mubarak, chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, Digital Energy Technical Section, Intelligent Field Petroleum Engineering Consultant, Saudi Aramco, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Monuments 3D Printing, and author. Pick up his book on Amazon or various other sources. Any version of history is just a story. Really fascinating discussion, Saeed. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to do this, because I know it's late there. Thanks for everything you're doing. And as we like to say on this show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through all your works. Really, really fascinating stories.
I really appreciate it. And thank you is not enough. And definitely we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Good seeing you.